Leo ni leo, wasemaye kesho ni muongo, basi nimpe mkono. Tembea na mi, chezea na mi, basi naitwa Jimmy Kiuno. What? What? I bet you Kenyans did not know that I knew that song. And for my Americans who definitely don't know that song, or anyone from anywhere in the world, that is a classic Kenyan hit, a classic Kenyan artist. His name is Isa, or if you have an American tongue, his name is Iser. And his music, some of the earliest music that I remember from Kenya. Now, topic of the day. I wanted to start off the video, a heavy topic video with something lighthearted. Isa. But tribalism. Ooh, heavy, depending on how you look at it. Now, where do I start? I came prepared today. Look at me being a scholar. Tribalism, in its broadest sense, refers to the strong identification and loyalty individuals feel towards their group. Now, I am a Kenyan diaspora, and being Kenyan means I come from a specific tribe. My tribe is Kikuyu. Now, within this video, I want to talk about how I've tried to understand Kenyan tribalism from a diaspora perspective. Now, where do we start? I gave you the definition of tribalism, and here in that tribalism definition, let me look at it again, just so you guys can understand what it is. Again, it is, in the broadest sense, refers to the strong identification and loyalty individuals feel towards their group. That may sound like lighthearted, not heavy, but how it manifests can be ugly, and it has been ugly, right? So, me being a Kikuyu has nothing to do with this video, but I thought I would throw that out there for you guys to understand that, for the non-Kenyans to understand that you have a stake in the game just based off what tribe you're born into, right? Now, when people hear tribalism, they may not understand it unless they come from a country where it's very evident, very divided, not divided, but it's out there in the open. You hear the different languages around you, right? Now, tribalism doesn't necessarily have to be based around a language. In my opinion, I think that even Americans are tribalists with their political party, right? Nowadays, you have Democrats and Republicans all wanting to throw each other off a bridge, depending on how extreme on each end you are. You have some people in the middle who are just like, yo, why y'all tripping? You have some people on the outside who are just like, man, I'm not getting involved in this. But at the end of the day, how it manifests itself is very similar to what happens back home in Kenya. Now, being that I am a diaspora, I'll say this. I grew up within a Kenyan community here in the US. And what I came to learn is that my community was predominantly from my tribe. As I was young, I never really saw an issue with that. I never really understood this whole thing of tribalism that people would talk about. And if I'm being honest, my innocence when I was a child, I thought every Kenyan was just the same tribe. I thought we were all just the same people, all just spoke the same language. We were all just Kikuyu, and we spoke Swahili. So when I started hearing different languages, I was like, yo, what are they saying? And then my mom would be like, oh, they're speaking Kisi, or they're speaking this, or they're speaking Luo, or they're speaking, you name it, right? Now, as a child growing up within the Kenyan community here, there were definitely kids of different tribes mixed in, but the predominant one around where I grew up were Kikuyus, right? I didn't actually understand this divide of how we go into our own groups together until I got older. Now, when this came to my realization was I would say I was working at Amazon. I think I was like 19 years old. I had just dropped out of college. I'm working at Amazon, big warehouse, forklifts, this and the other, and there's another Kenyan guy there, and he invited me to a barbecue that was happening in another side of town, same state but just another side of town. I thinking it's just gonna be probably more Kenyans that I've probably seen before, this and the other, was in for a surprise because he was just interested in the fact that I left college. He had just gotten to America fresh, right? So me and him, we built a bond. We're friends. We eat lunch together. Just I just see him as a regular Kenyan. He invites me to the barbecue, and when I go there, it was at a park, a public park, and I get there and there's a bunch of Kenyans I've never seen. And then they're speaking in another language that I've never heard. I think they were a lot of Kisii Kenyans, right? So this is my first time truly being exposed to the fact that what I grew up in, my little bubble, thinking that these churches that I go to around us and these people that we know, most of them are usually Kikuyu and you'll find one by one. I thought that was the normal. I didn't know that there were full on communities from Kenya, different tribes that had their own communities and their own gatherings and things that I would not know of. So to me, it was like really a eye-opening moment in the sense of like, how many other groups do I not know of that are hanging out and doing their own things? They have their own churches, this and the other. And then I thought about it and I was like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, if you were to really break it down to a human level, I personally think that tribalism is something natural, something humane. It's painted in a bad light because of how it manifests. And the way it manifests itself, I wouldn't necessarily call that, okay, yeah, it would be tribalism, loyalty to one's group. Yeah. This is a lot. I don't see it as a negative thing on its own. How humans, um, how we as Kenyans, or we as whatever you are, manifest it is where it gets ugly. Because think back in the day when, even before Europeans got to Kenya and before there were before there was a third party saying you're different from him, right? Before there was a third party to tell us that we were different. We knew we were different. We spoke different languages, but we probably traded based on what this community could provide and what we had in abundance. We would trade this and the other. I've learned some folklore and some old Kenyan history of how some tribes would interact with each other. So this concept of tribalism, I don't think it's new, and I don't think it's necessarily uh, brought in by some outside influence like European, this and the other. It's always been there. People have always lived within their own groups. The Kikuyus were here. The Luos were there. The Kalenjins were here. The Maasai were here. The Swahili were here. The Mjikenda were here. So on and so on. The Samburu. The Somalis were here. All that. The idea of people living within their groups, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, when you look at tribalism back home, it's a lot uglier than what it is here. I would say the way that it manifests itself here is simply people of a community gathering together, fellowshipping together, communing together, right? Based off their shared cultural values and languages, etc. There's nothing wrong with that. But back home, now you're talking about, we're all Kenyans. We're not in America, right? Like, America is not Kenya. Yes, there's Kenyans here, but this is not Kenya. So it's a difference when now we're all Kenyan. Now we all speak different languages, this and the other. Personally, I think that with the new Gen Z and stuff, the whole tribalism stuff, like, people really don't care about it. I personally think it's a lot heavier with the parents and the older generations than my group. I'm like 26. I'm 26. So, growing up here, the way tribalism manifests itself, I would say, is light. It's simply people hanging out with their own people, but we still intermingle. I've made friends from different tribes here in the U.S., so there's no problem with it, right? Now, back home, when I look at it from a diaspora perspective, the way I've understood it, it's usually about politics and power where tribalism comes into play. And like I said before, I think that it is mostly within the older generation and this new generation of Gen Z and the new kids coming up. They're not tribal from what I've seen. So the way it manifests itself is power. Every time someone's going into power, whether that's presidency or local seat or parliament, whatever you name it, there's the issue of what tribe are they from, A, B, C, D. Now, people growing up in Kenya have probably experienced tribalism in the ugliest form, where you're being discriminated, you're being attacked, you're probably being chased, you're being targeted based off your tribe, right? Now, do I think that's going to continue? Hopefully it dies off with my generation. Hopefully the idea of you speak a different language than me, so you shouldn't be president. I hope all that crap dies off with the older people. Like how realistic would it be for us to get to a merit election where it is strictly about competence, strictly about what you can actually give the country? I think it's happening right now. The Gen Z protests that you see happening, Kenya's we're leveling up. We're stepping out of the old. The new generation is like, we're not continuing with that crap. I love seeing it, especially from the US. I may not be able to be in the protests. I may not be able to be in the mandamanos and all that stuff happening. But it made all that made me think of, like, when I go back, since I'm planning on moving back within a few months, how can I keep myself from being influenced by outside sources, outside voices that may try to, influence me to, who knows, do things only with my own tribe? That would be stupid, right? So I'm thinking about this from the sense of how it manifested itself here. It's light. You hang out with your people, I hang out with my people, no problem. Yes, even some churches would cross pollinate. You would find multiple different tribes within there. It was okay. But back home, it's a whole different ballpark where somebody could, treat you differently completely just off of hearing you're from this tribe. Um, One thing I think my parents, for never, for never, for never pouring and polluting my mind with any tribalist ideas. Because I truly think that hate slash despise and envy, any bad feeling of malice towards someone, is either learned, taught, experienced, in the sense of this person from this tribe treated you bad and this and the other. Now you go hating a whole tribe. Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff is taught or experienced or influenced, right? And one thing I think is that both of my parents never spewed anything about another tribe to me. So as I go into Kenya, trying to venture into business and everything, I'm aware that at some point in my journey, some issue with tribe may come up, right? So I was just thinking of how has it portrayed itself in my life thus far as a diaspora? How have I interacted with it? Never, I've never been wronged by some person from another tribe, and now I hate their tribe. I never understood that. But when you're back home and a president is doing XYZ to this and that, maybe a industry that your community is in or a place or this, they're not building roads in your area. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's you guys know. It's real back home. But out here, we're you're Kenyan. You're Kenyan and you probably hang out with your folks, you have some friends, you have some friends from other tribes or your tribe, but it's never been anything like deep and heavy compared to back home. So, I just wanted to bring up that topic, kind of show how I analyze the whole idea of tribalism. I think it's innately human to want to be around and surrounded by your people and this and the other. Now, when you go into business, if you think you will succeed from just doing business with just your people, you're in for bumpy road and quick failure. So, as I approach this journey going back to Kenya, the whole idea of tribalism is there for the fact that it exists back home. Now, I don't think it exists as heavy with my generation, but it's still there. It's going to manifest itself in different ways and different places. And I don't want to be influenced. Thus far in my life, I have not been influenced by anyone to hate another tribe, love another tribe more, this and the other. But at the end of the day, life is life. Things will happen back home. So, I'm thinking about this topic in the sense of even my approach to business. How do I avoid being susceptible to, working with just my community? How do I avoid the idea of what's it called? Doing business in a certain area where I'm familiar with, right? So, I don't know. I just want to throw that out there. I don't want to rant. There's not really much structure to this video, but it was more so like tribalism exists. I never really understood it until I got older and saw different communities and started understanding and watching Kenyan politics and seeing how it's thrown here and there lightheartedly, how faint side remarks towards the community is thrown out. And for me, I don't like none of that crap. For me, I'm like, being a country of 52, I think that's 42 or 52 tribes, or being a country of one identity, Kenyans. Let's be Kenyans. It's stronger. That's it for this video. I have nothing else to say for y'all. I hope you guys enjoyed this unpacking of that word tribalism and how I've tried to understand it as a diaspora. That's the end of this video. I love y'all. See y'all in the next video. Hope you guys take care. Bye.